Imagine risking American pilots' lives because you couldn't put your phone down. That's not hypothetical. That's what's being alleged here. And it raises a serious question about who should be trusted with national security.
And I just want to be clear, was there a finding that he violated any regulation or law?
I think you'll be able to see that tomorrow. In the report they talk about DOD rules.
How concerned were you by what you saw in the declassified portion of that report?
I've been concerned about this since this thing started. That you have a Secretary of Defense that shared what he said is unclassified information that was taken off of a secret, system, and shared this on his own cell phone over an unsecured app with a bunch of people and a reporter. No offense to all of you. That put those pilots flying those strikes at risk. If I was one of those guys flying off the aircraft carrier and in the 1990s, and I found out Dick Cheney, the Secretary of Defense, was sharing information about like launch time and payload and, generally where I was going, I'd have been really upset, because you do not ever expect that from your leadership. And I think this and what's now happening in Venezuela and the Secretary of Defense getting on a stage and saying ridiculous things to generals and admirals and senior enlisted all this demonstrates that he is unqualified for this job.
But do you think there will be any disciplinary or legal action against him?
That's a good question for the White House, because like I said when the Signalgate thing started, they fired the wrong guy.
I guess
Mike Waltz was not the guy that should have been fired. Pete Hegseth should have been fired.
What did you learn that wasn't in the Atlantic story from all those months ago?
Not much. Yeah.
The finding was that the information should have been classified, correct?
I don't think that matters. I don't think that matters at all. I mean, what matters is were people at risk? Should a Secretary of Defense been using his personal cell phone with Signal? I think every one of you could answer that question.
What are you hoping to hear from Admiral Bradley tomorrow?
Well, I'm not going to hear from him.
Okay. Well, what are you hoping he will tell the leaders of these committees?
I expect that he is going to tell them exactly what happened and why he felt the order that he sent down. Well, first of all, what was the order he got from Pete Hegseth, who was in the room, and why he decided that this was the right thing to do. I don't know him very well personally. He is very well respected in the military. And I have been concerned for a long time because of the way that the Secretary of Defense conducts himself. And you have a president that, recently just started talking about killing people. He gets questions about operations. Yeah, we're just going to kill people. That creates an environment where it affects people's decision making. And then bad stuff happens. Thank you.
Thank you.
What Senator Mark Kelly is doing here is more than venting frustration. He's pulling back the curtain on a core principle of national security that most Americans never see, but that every service member understands instinctively. Information discipline saves lives, and leadership failure puts people in danger. When Kelly talks about launch times, payloads, and operational details, he's speaking from lived experience as a combat pilot. In military operations, even fragments of information can be deadly when pieced together by adversaries. You don't need a full mission plan to target aircraft, ships, or personnel. You need patterns, timing, and intent. That's why sensitive information is kept on secure systems, why phones are restricted, and why senior leaders are expected to model discipline, not shortcut it. The most important takeaway here is that Kelly isn't arguing about a technical classification label. He's arguing about risk. Whether something is stamped classified after the fact is almost beside the point. The real question is whether the Secretary of Defense used judgment consistent with the responsibility of the office. sharing operational details pulled from a secure system on a personal phone over an unsecured app with people who had no operational need to know, breaks the basic trust between leadership and those carrying out the mission. That's why Kelly's analogy matters. Pilots and troops don't expect perfection, but they do expect their leaders to protect them from unnecessary exposure. When that expectation is broken, morale erodes and decision-making suffers. People hesitate, they second-guess orders, and in high-risk environments, hesitation can be fatal. Kelly also ties this behavior to a broader pattern. Leadership isn't just about isolated decisions, it's about tone. When senior officials speak casually about violence, dismiss norms, or treat national security as performative bravado, that attitude cascades downward. Subordinates feel pressure to comply quickly rather than carefully. Safeguards become obstacles instead of protections. That's how mistakes compound into crises. The point about accountability is critical. Kelly isn't asking for political revenge. He's asking why consequences seem to fall on the wrong people, while those at the top escape scrutiny. In any military unit, accountability is supposed to move up the chain, not stop at the first convenient scapegoat. When it doesn't, it signals that rules are optional for the powerful and mandatory for everyone else. At its core, this exchange raises a simple but uncomfortable question. If the Secretary of Defense won't follow the same security rules expected of junior officers and enlisted personnel, how can the public trust him with decisions that affect global stability and American lives? That's why Kelly uses the word unqualified, not as an insult, but as an assessment of judgment under pressure. This isn't about politics for its own sake. It's about whether the systems designed to protect service members, allies, and civilians are being respected or hollowed out from the top. And it's about whether we're willing to demand competence and accountability from those entrusted with the most consequential power in government. If you believe national security leadership should be serious, disciplined, and accountable, watch closely, stay informed, and share this conversation. Subscribe to Capital Lens for clear, progressive analysis that cuts through the noise and focuses on what these moments actually mean for democracy, safety, and the people who serve.